Welcome to Nightfall Radio. I'm Mason Black, and like every night, I tell the stories no one wants to remember. No spotlight, no medals, just the truth, and the people time tried to forget. Tonight, I'm taking you to a small town. Nothing remarkable, not on any tourist map, but it once had a night where every shadow came alive. An old man, a notebook, a photograph from 1982, and 7 names never spoken again for 40 years. This isn't a murder case. It's a reminder. You're listening to The Man Who Woke the Town, and I suggest don't listen alone. Part 1, Whitney, After Midnight. If you've ever driven through a small town at 2 a.m., you'll notice the flickering streetlights, the dying neon scenes, and the kind of silence that makes your own heartbeat feel too loud. But that night, in Whitney, Louisiana, what echoed wasn't the wind, it was footsteps of an old man, and every step he took was a sentence passed. Whitney was the kind of town that didn't stand out, and liked it that way. Population, 5,000. 2 churches, 1 bar, 1 gas station, and a tiny town hall whose windows still used frosted glass from the 1960s. People lived slow here. They believed in God, in the sheriff, and in the old rules. They didn't like strangers, and they especially didn't like strangers arriving at 2 in the morning. The midnight bus slowed to a stop on the gravel shoulder. Its headlights lit the dust like fog. Only one passenger stepped off, a tall black man, silver beard, long dark coat. A canvas bag in one hand, no phone, no suitcase, just a small notebook and a faded photograph. The driver looked at him and said softly, "You sure about this? Nobody's going to answer their door this time of night." The old man nodded, didn't reply, then turned and walked into town. Alone. Whitney at 2:13 a.m. was cold, damp, and surreal, like a dream left too long in the dark. Shuttered storefronts, streetlights flickering like they were trying to die. Ray's barber glowed faintly from an old security cam bulb. Across the street, St. Eliza Church stood frozen, its rusted bell tower casting shadows into a starless sky. The man walked past it all, without stopping, without looking. Only when he reached Lyle's Motel did he pause. A small bell rang as he opened the door. Inside, a white woman in a housecoat looked up from behind the counter, groggy and annoyed. "I don't, take walk-ins after midnight unless you booked ahead." "I did," he said, handing over a handwritten note. Slanted penmanship, no email, no phone number. She frowned, read it, then fell silent. Finally, she slid him a key. "Room 5. The last door in the row near the dumpsters. Just for one night. Be gone by morning, you hear?" He nodded, said nothing more. Room 5 had one single bed, wallpaper peeling, the smell of mildew and stale smoke. He placed the bag down, opened the notebook. Inside, 7 names, each one underlined once. At the top of the page, Whitney, 1982, 3:47 a.m., smudged ink. Then he pulled out the photograph. A group of black children. 6 smiling, 1 face obscured. On the back it read, "We will never forget." He placed the photo on the desk and sat, quietly. Only the night wind and the tick of a wall clock remained. 3:17 a.m., Whitney still slept. But at the edge of town, inside a small wooden house with a sign that read "Sheriff, off duty," a middle-aged, heavy-set man sat up from his sofa. Sweat glistened on his forehead. His eyes were glued to the grainy security camera feed in his kitchen. "No way," he whispered. "It's him." He reached for the drawer, pulled out his pistol, then turned on the light. A yellow lamp lit up an old photo hanging on the wall, a group picture of 8 uniformed officers from 1981. In the center stood a tall black man in military dress, the same man who'd just stepped off the bus. Some wounds never heal, some questions never get answered, and in a town like Whitney, there are some people who were never meant to return. Part 2. The List Awakens. Memory is a strange beast. The more you try to bury it, the harder it claws its way back. And in Whitney, some memories have real names, real faces, and real guilt. 0742 a.m. The only coffee shop in town, Millie's Place, opens its doors. The smell of baked goods and slow-drip coffee fills the air like a small miracle in a town slowly forgetting itself. Millie, over 60, silver curls and all, is wiping down the counter when the door opens. The man who walks in makes her freeze. "Good morning," he says, soft as the wind. White button-up shirt, old canvas hat, his leather shoes still shining. He sits by the window, the seat nobody picks. Black coffee, no sugar. Millie forces a smile, but her hand trembles as she sets the cup down, because she knows exactly who he is. 3 blocks away, Sheriff Tom Griggs is staring at a monitor in his office. Security feed from a gas station at the town's edge. "I knew he'd come back," he mutters. On his desk is an old case file, yellowed pages, a blood stain on the upper corner. The cover reads, "Nathaniel E. Brooks, missing 1982. Inside is a 7-page report. Officer Brooks reported missing during pursuit in northern Whitney Woods. No body recovered, no evidence of foul play." Someone had slashed a red pen across the bottom and scrawled one word: lies. 10:03 a.m. On Main Street, the old man walks slowly. Still carrying that thin canvas bag, people watch. Some step back into shops, others bow their heads. At the old liquor store, long abandoned, he stops. The wooden door creaks. Dust clouds the light. He steps in, reaches under the counter, and peels off something taped beneath it. An old badge, rusted, inscribed Whitney PD. On the back, etched by hand, "If I die, they live. If I live, they must answer." That night, a man named Clyde Barnes, now chairman of the town council, once deputy sheriff in 1982, finds a plain envelope in his mailbox. No return address. Inside is a black and white photo. Him, Sheriff Griggs, and a young girl, her face scratched out. On the back, "I remember that night. Do you?" Before the night ends, the first person on the list vanishes. His name, Robert Lane, evidence clerk for the Whitney police. That day, he doesn't come home. His phone is silent. Security footage shows him leaving at 7:08 p.m., but the recording ends abruptly. No investigation is launched, just a quiet internal note. Possibly left town voluntarily. 8:15 p.m., outside St. Eliza's Church, a wooden sign appears nailed to a cross. Scrawled handwriting reads, "1. Robert Lane didn't die by accident, died because the truth was buried." Sheriff Griggs shows up, rips the sign down, burns it right there in the churchyard. "You want war, Brooks? I'm still alive to give it to you." But what he doesn't know is that someone else is watching from behind the trees. Silent, taking notes, holding a list with 6 names left. Silence is the weapon of the guilty. Memory is the weapon of the betrayed. And no matter how deeply Whitney sleeps, it can't ignore the sound of names being called back from the dark. One by one, not leaving blood, only the question. Part 3. The ones who couldn't hide. The truth doesn't come knocking with an invitation. It comes as a cold knock in the dead of night. And when you open the door, you'd better be ready. 1:23 a.m. An old pickup truck sped across the rusting Redstone Bridge. Behind the wheel was James Jim Colburn, once the head training officer of Whitney PD in 1982, now the largest landowner in the county. He was shaking. His hands gripped the wheel tighter with each mile. The headlights lit the fog ahead, but he wasn't looking at the road. His eyes were locked on the paper lying in the passenger seat. An old photograph. Jim stood beside a young black girl, her expression hollow, lost. Beside it, a handwritten note. That night, who ordered her hands bound with cable wire? Jim pulled over, lit the photo on fire with a trembling hand. Ash drifted into the mist. But as he turned back to the road, someone was standing there. A figure, tall, silent, eyes cutting through the fog like knives. Jim slammed the brakes. Tires screamed. The truck skidded to a stop, barely a meter from the figure. He opened the door, but there was no one there. Only a line of chalk-written words across the windshield. 2. Jim Colburn. Death is not silence. It's a confession left unfinished. By morning, Jim Colburn was gone. Not at the farm, not at home. His phone rang unanswered. The police released a statement. He had resigned from the Whitney Agricultural Board and had left town for personal reasons. No one spoke of the truth. Back in room 5 of Lyle's motel, the old man sat by the window, writing. 2 names, now underlined in red. Robert Lane, Jim Colburn, 5 to go. That night, a woman was seen leaving her home after 11 p.m. Clara Mayfield, principal of Whitney High School. A neighbor's security cam caught her walking fast toward the abandoned church. She wore a silk dress, carried a bundle wrapped in brown paper. Her face was tight with fear. Her steps hurried. 30 minutes later, lights flickered inside the church. For the first time in 12 years. By the time police arrived, the place was empty. No person inside. Only a photo stood on the altar. A young black girl in a school uniform, eyes wide with innocence. The name under it, Lana Jefferson, missing 1982. Beside the photo sat an old student file. Inside, in a single disciplinary note, Lana was caught resisting Ms. Clara Mayfield's directive and was placed in solitary for 3 days for review. That's signed, C. Mayfield. At dawn, Clara Mayfield was found unconscious in the storage shed behind the school. Mouth taped, hands bound, no injuries, no intruder, only one message scrawled across the whiteboard nearby. I didn't kill you, I just wanted you to feel what Lana once did. The whole town began to panic, but no one called the old man. No one dared ask who he was. Because deep down, they knew. They remembered the man from back then, the one who investigated Lana Jefferson's disappearance, the one who'd been told to leave town quietly because he didn't fit the community, the one who once said, "If I leave, you'll think you've won, but if I return, I won't knock." Whitney thought it buried memory beneath clay and decaying chapels. But memory doesn't rot. It waits. It watches. And when it comes back, it doesn't knock. It kicks down the door with the fury of the forgotten. Part 4. The town wakes up. Some towns don't die from poverty, storms, or war. They die slowly, from silence, from the lies swept under the rug. And when that rug lifts, everything begins to reek. Whitney, 6:14 a.m. On the bulletin board outside City Hall, someone had taped a white sheet of paper with bold black letters. She called our names. We didn't answer. Now she's calling the whole town. That morning, nearly every resident of Whitney had heard about Clara Mayfield. The high school principal, found tied up and disoriented in the school's back shed. She claimed she had no memory of how she got there. She was taken to a temporary psychiatric facility. She hasn't appeared in public since. Whitney High School closed for 2 days. No official statement, but everyone knew something had cracked. Sheriff Tom Griggs, the man who buried the 1982 Lana Jefferson case, now sat alone in his office. The old police department photo lay face down on his desk. Next to it, a printed list, 7 names, 3 of them crossed out: Robert Lane, Jim Colburn, Clara Mayfield. Only 4 remained, and one of them was his own. 9:42 p.m. that evening, an emergency meeting took place inside St. Eliza's Church, a building usually opened only on Sunday mornings. Over 60 townspeople filled the wooden pews. They murmured, worried, looking around. There was no pastor, no agenda, just one woman who stood up, Tamika Jefferson, Lana's niece. She placed an old cassette recorder on the pulpit, pressed play. April 12, 1982, Lana Jefferson, 17 years old, recording after being questioned by Whitney police. A trembling voice filled the room, weak, hesitant, but clear. They told me to keep quiet, said I saw something I wasn't supposed to. They kept me in the janitor's closet for 3 days. No food, no school, and Sheriff Griggs was the last face I saw. The entire church froze. Tension clawed the air. An elderly councilman stood up. "Where did you get that tape?" Tamika looked directly at him. "It was delivered to my house this morning. No return address. But inside the envelope, one note. Let Whitney tell its own truth." By the next afternoon, Sheriff Griggs had vanished from his office. The door had been broken into. Security cameras disabled. All that remained inside was his badge, resting on the desk, and an old map of Whitney. On that map, a single red mark pointed to the edge of town, a trail leading into the northern woods. The same trail where Lana Jefferson was said to have run away 40 years ago. State investigators were called in. No officer from Whitney PD said a word. Everyone knew, but no one spoke. That night, residents gathered outside St. Eliza's again. No lights, only candles. Someone had erected a wooden cross in the center of the lawn. Nailed to it was a hand-carved sign, "Whitney, open your eyes." Because he kept his open for 40 years, just to come back and remind us, justice isn't dead. It's just been quiet, and now it's walking home. A town doesn't need blood to feel pain. All it needs is the truth. And when truth stands tall, walks through the gate, and calls out names one by one, no one gets to pretend to sleep anymore. Not even those who once thought they were untouchable. Part 5, The Last Survivor. You don't get to choose the last survivor. You never know who's strong enough to endure, who's crazy enough to come back, and who's quiet enough to become the darkness others fear. 4:12 a.m., day 6 since he arrived in Whitney. Fog poured down the northern trail, once called the Forbidden Forest. The place Lana Jefferson was marked missing in 1982. No one entered those woods after dusk. No lights, no signs, just a winding red dirt path leading deep into the dark. That morning, an elderly black man stepped into it. Alone, carrying only an old map, a worn notebook with 6 names crossed out, and a yellow flashlight so old its battery casing had rusted. Back in town, people began to gather. No one said why, no one called a meeting. They just felt that something was happening. The old radio station, abandoned for years, suddenly came back on air. A tape recording crackled through the static. A low, gravelly voice, familiar. If you're hearing this, it means I've reached the end, not for revenge, not for forgiveness, but to give all of you and myself a proper ending. In the northern woods, an old clearing once used as a makeshift police outpost, now overtaken by brush and sinking earth. But the old man remembered exactly where to kneel. He dug with bare hands through cold, damp earth. Roots clawed at his wrists as if trying to keep buried what the town had long tried to forget. After 20 minutes, his fingers struck rusted metal. A box. Inside it, a broken police badge, a torn ribbon of hair, and a crumpled note, handwritten, "They locked me in, but I still heard you knocking from far away. I knew you'd come back. I believed. Memory never dies." Faintly signed, Lana Jefferson. He froze. His hands trembled, not from fear, but because the moment had come. He opened his notebook, crossed out the final name, Elijah Brooks, alive. For the first time, he wrote down his own name. At Whitney Town Hall, a loud knock echoed through the doors. State police had arrived. Behind them, over 200 residents holding signs, candles, and photos of Lana Jefferson. There was no riot, no shouting, just the truth, standing in the square like dried blood in sunlight. And through that crowd, they saw the old man walk out from the woods, carrying the metal box, walking between two silent rows of people. No one touched him, no one stopped him, because Whitney was finally ready to speak what it once swallowed. That night, at the first memorial for Lana Jefferson in 40 years, the box was placed on the altar. No speeches, just the old man's voice through a microphone. "I didn't come back to end anyone. I came back to end the silence you created." Justice isn't always loud. It doesn't always win. But when it survives, it comes back with enough memory, enough names, and enough eyes to make an entire town bow its head. 1 month later, a new sign stood in Whitney's town square, in memory of Lana Jefferson and those who never forgot her. All 7 individuals connected to the 1982 case were either charged or reopened for investigation. Whitney became national news for 3 straight weeks. But the elderly black man, no one ever found him again. Only a single calling card was left on a pew at St. Eliza's Church. Mason Black, the storyteller, not the one who ends things. Outro. Mason